What's up, guys? Quinn Hennick of Clinical Athlete here. We just want to thank you for being a part of the Tendinopathy Rehab Template beta group. And this is going to be a short video to take you through the entire template. It's just a brief overview of the whole thing. So you see here at the bottom, we've got all our tabs. We're on the provider and athletes tab right now. And we can type in the athlete's height, body weight, age, name, the provider taking care of them, the location of where they are, where they're training. And then here you can put the start date. So whatever date the athlete starts the template, and then what phase they're starting in. So if you want to jump around, you want to start on phase 2 and skip phase 1, you can do so. And then you can pick the week of the phase that you want to start on. And it goes all the way to 20. And just know that the actual template, the rehab portion of the template, is 16 weeks long. And then these last 4 weeks are return to sport. So these are actually a weightlifting program that we've put together. And then the day of the week that you would want to start. I don't know why you'd want to start in the middle of the week, or maybe that's just when you got the template. So you've got some freedom there. And then below that, this button here where it says clear all data, that clears the entire template. So if you've got information here all filled in phase 1, you've got weeks of information filled in day 2, just be very careful about hitting that button there, because that will clear the entire template. And then we have a brief overview of the user manual here. Just enough of the key points to get you started. Would highly recommend that you read the entire user manual that's sent to you via PDF to get a detailed description of everything that's going on within the template. But here you can read on the outcome testing and everything else. So that's the front page of the template. Phase 1 is isometrics. So before every training day, you're going to have the athlete perform the biofeedback test, which you can learn more about in the user manual. And they've got 2 chances, so you can press pass. Let's say they pass it the first time, it's green. And just know that if they fail the biofeedback test, it'll turn red. You can pick your isometric exercise here. So we've got double leg. Click this drop-down menu, and you've got your options here: wall sit, Spanish squat, counterbalance squat. For your single leg exercises, you've got options here: split squat, knee extension. And then you can put in the sets. This is duration, because these are isometric. So whatever number you put in will be in the form of, could be anything that you want. We'll say 60 for 60 seconds. So whatever unit, just stay consistent. Would recommend using seconds for the duration. And then whatever weight that you want to put in. Now, if you leave that 0, then it will not calculate tonnage or anything like that. So because these are multiplied. So if it's a wall sit, put in the athlete's body weight. Let's say they weigh 150 pounds, and then it'll calculate the intensity and the tonnage. So that's just body weight there. If you want to add external load, like with this split squat, then you can put in just the weight that they're holding. Just make sure that you know that you do the same thing consistently every single time. So anytime that you measure split squats and you don't want to take into account body weight, you just want to take into account the weight that they use, then do that every single time. Otherwise, you'd want to do 200 here or 210, because that's his body weight, or her 150 pounds plus the external load of 60 pounds. And then all of these metrics, we have session RPE. We're going to do a separate video for these metrics, but session RPE, session duration, session score, and then our daily totals of exercise tonnage and absolute intensity, which again, we'll explain. But these auto-calculate. So this is phase 1. Phase 1 is just a week long. And then down here, we've got weekly totals of tonnage, and this is session score here. That'll correct when we have more values. In phase 2, which is our isotonic phase, I'll skip over here and I'll zoom in for you. Hunt it. Okay. It starts on week 2 of the entire template. So this is week 1 of phase 2, but it's week 2 of the entire template. Hopefully that makes sense. So again, biofeedback tests. Every day you're going to do that, pass or fail. Double leg exercise. You've got options here, lots of options. Then you'll pick another double leg exercise. So let's say we do front squat, and then we do belt squat, and then we do split squat. And here is the prescribed tempo. We've got sets here and a prescribed RPE. So these are your warm-up sets, essentially, all the way up to the prescribed working set or 15 rep maximum. So these are RPEs that are set that we're recommending that you build up to as you're building up in intensity. And then over here is what the athlete actually did. So let's say you did one set of 8 reps with 100 pounds. Boom. All of your metrics are going to populate. Any feedback that the athlete wants to give, you can give that here. Let's say then you just decided to do 2 sets of 10 reps with 135 pounds. It'll continue to auto-populate. So if you increased weight every time, you could just do one set, and then increase weight as you go. That's an isotonic day. And then our isotonic phase 2, is 4 weeks long. And on Tuesdays and Thursdays, or day 2 and day 4, you can either rest or you've got optional isometric. So it's just basically a repeat of phase 1 if the athlete wants to. And then day 3 is isotonic, day 4 is isometric optional, and day 5 is isotonic. And then we've got weekly totals of our metrics down at the bottom, which again we'll go over in more detail. But just make sure that you know that these drop-down menus, they're not hidden. Sometimes they hide on people, so they're there. Session RPE has a drop-down menu as well, all the way from 1 to 10. Session duration is going to be in minutes, and so I'll just show you here. 9 was an hour long, and then our session score, we're going to multiply these 2 units to get a session score, and I'll explain that in another video. So this is an entire day of training. So the athlete's going to input their session RP and their session duration at the end of a session. Phase 3, more of the same, except phase 3, we introduce dynamic loading, the snatch and clean and jerk variations. So make sure you follow the user manual to get the week-to-week breakdown of phase 3. But dynamic loading, you're going to pick one weightlifting movement of the day. So it's either going to be a snatch, clean, or jerk focus. Let's just say we're going to focus on the snatch for their first day of reintroduction to dynamic loading. And then we're going to pick a cluster. We'll start with snatch cluster 1, which is just a series of exercises that we've put together to progress the snatch. We'll start with a lift off to the knee. And then let's say they did that really, really well. And then you can put in whatever tempo they used, the sets that they did, the amount of reps, the weight, the rest here. We've got these things blank because dynamic loading is variable. So we haven't set that for you so that the clinician can type these prescriptions in themselves based on the athlete's tolerance. And then over here is what they actually did. So it might look exactly the same as you prescribed, or maybe you prescribe it, a week in advance or a day or 2 in advance, and they end up doing something a little bit different over here. But this is ideal or prescribed, and this is what they actually did. Hopefully that makes sense. And then let's say we still want to do snatch cluster 1, but now I also wanted them to do pull or a full extension. And then lastly, maybe that's it for the day, but just to show you for demonstration purposes, snatch cluster 2 is another progression, and now we took that into a muscle snatch. So their first dynamic loading day for snatch was a lift off to the knee for a few sets, pull to extension, and a muscle snatch. So that's a nice little snatch day. And then they're going to perform their isotonic exercises as they normally would. And you've got options now in phase 3 if you want to do, because they're doing more dynamic loading in phase 3, you can have them do bilateral, unilateral if you want to decrease the load, or bilateral, unilateral, just like we did in phase 2. And you pick the exercises just like we did before. No, low bar back squat is not an option for weightlifters. I refuse. Maybe I'll change my mind. Maybe not. As we go down into phase 3 here, it's just more of the same. So Again, make sure that you read the breakdown in the user manual of the actual weeks, but just wanted to show you how everything works here. And then these weekly percentage differences we'll go over in the metrics video as well, but it'll show you percentage changes from week to week for tonnage, which is sets times reps times weight, average intensity, absolute intensity, and the session score, or the total AU. So you'll be able to see their percentage of increase or decrease from week to week in those metrics. And then phase 4 is our return to sport phase. So you got a straight up weightlifting program here. Day 1, snatch, pull plus snatch for 3 sets, clean and jerk for 3 sets, overhead squats, and then our prescribed RPEs and sets and reps, and what they actually did over here, feedback. All these things we'll calculate. Day 2, power snatch, power clean. So you see, just a straight up weightlifting program. They've been doing their progressive rehab for 4 months up to this point now. So they should be hopefully ready to go into a real weightlifting program. And then we've got a data analysis tab. This is a demo tab. So this is just showing you what these graphs could look like, just to give you a demonstration. But from week to week, now it starts on week 2 because the metrics that you saw, the weekly totals here down at the bottom of phase 2 and phase 3, these weekly totals are shown here in these graphs. Make note that the weekly totals are only isotonic exercises, the tempo work. It's not, these graphs do not take into account isometrics. They do not take into account the snatch, clean, or jerk progressions. The reason for that is because isometrics is really just pain modulation anyway, so we're not necessarily tracking performance increase with isometrics. And then the dynamic loading is just, it's very variable. If any of the coaches in this group that you know of, you know that if somebody's reintroducing the snatch, the clean, or the jerk, a lot of times you're just doing empty bar work for several sets, or you're doing very light weights for several. It's a feel out process. So we found that it would be very difficult to track that, because it's going to be so different from week to week. You're not going to just linearly progress the way that you can do with the isotonic. So just keep that in mind. These are just isotonic numbers. They could progress from week to week. The red line here is the SRPE total for each week. So just to know, like, if you've got building weeks and they're really, really tough weeks, but this red line is really low, well, they're perceiving those workouts as really easy, which is maybe good. That means they're recovering. If you've got weeks that are relatively low in volume, and yet this red RPE line is spiking, then maybe it's hard, but we'll get into more of that in the metrics video. So we just know that we've got graphs here: weekly absolute intensity, weekly average intensity, weekly tonnage totals, AC, acute to chronic workload ratios, and weekly session score, or weekly arbitrary units. And then the other tab here is the data analysis of the actual week. So I had plugged in some values there. That's why you've got a week spike. And then our athlete died, apparently. But this is the graphs. These are the graphs that will actually auto-populate as you go through the template. So that is just a brief overview. And this blue dotted line here is just a trend line. So that populates automatically as you trend from week to week. And this is a red trend line that is trending down. So it'll turn red if it trends down. It'll be blue if it trends up. So that's a general overview of this patellar tendinopathy template for weightlifters. And we'll see you in the forum.